Here comes our next rain-making system. What's going on here? This actually isn't even the cold front. It's basically its own little miniature cold front. We call this cold pool propagation because with these storms, they bring down a lot of cold air from the top of the atmosphere. When that happens, it hits the ground, fans on out, and acts like its own cold front. Once we get into the evening hours and there's less of a difference between the hot ground and the colder top of the atmosphere, well, they start to fade on out. So this passed east of the immediate metro, but calming on down again. For the most part, yeah, these storms more bark than bite. Yeah, no impacts from Arlene expected here in the Carolinas. What we are seeing, though, are some nasty storms, especially up to the north and west of the Queen City. I was talking about some hail falling down in the Morganton area. That's thanks to this cell here. And here's some photos from Christy McDermott. Rain potential, not super heavy unless you get caught on one of those heavy storm tracks. You can see that exactly right there, but areas that only see those general showers off to the east, well, you could only be stuck with about a quarter inch, but clear for now. But you see down to the south and west, maybe another band of flurries, even snow showers. Could be a bit heavy at times, especially this little pocket just to the west of Chester County and York County in South Carolina. These darker blues, the heavier snow. We call this a backdoor cold front because normally they move west to east. Well, this is almost moving east to west in a certain way. Look at all this cooler air heading in this direction. 49 in Boston, 53 in Caribou. So smoke is not the only thing heading this way. Much cooler air. Some more good news for us, not really good news for Cuba, but that track has moved a bit eastward, so it's going to spend some more time over land. That's a big reason why the National Hurricane Center, who makes these cones here, have kind of dialed back on the intensity of the storm. I know a lot of us think September as the month we can finally bring back the pumpkin spice, but the meteorologist in me, that I am, tells me that it is also the peak of hurricane season, and right now we have brand new hurricanes. Sure, right. Let's talk about those sprinkles on our radar feed. Wait a minute. Is that pollen? Oh, all right. Wait. I got something for this though. Don't worry. Okay, here we go. Bear with me, folks. All right, let's bring out the big guns. There we go. All right.
Natural behaviors in large outdoor caging.
Guys, I'm sorry. I just saw that face and I don't care what it is. I would just take that on home. By the way, just anything's a good boy if you try hard enough. That's my motto. Anywho, looking at our current temperatures, 50s, 60s. Next weekend, it is June. Summer is here. And for the most part, looks like it's here to stay.
We're getting little bits and pieces just to get us prepared for what's coming all summer long, right,
Yes,
James?
indeed, Marvin. Hopefully this rain once again kind of clears out that air quality, that poor air quality. We'll talk about those fires in Canada and what to expect from that coming up at about 6:30. Right. Snow. This is only from 2 go-rounds around King Street, which is the main road in and out of Boone. Just check out how deep this is. The things we do for entertainment, folks. Oh! Yeah, this is a huge pile of snow. No small feat getting this up and off the roads. They've been brining it all.
Meteorologist James Scott is live at Romare Bearden Park in Uptown for some tips on how to keep your furry friends safe in the upcoming summer heat. Hey, James.
Yeah, hey there, Morgan, and I'll tell you what, I could use a fur coat out here myself as lows get on down to the 40s and 50s overnight tonight, but temperatures will be on the upswing from here as we close within 2 weeks of summer. So I caught up with a local vet for some tips on how to keep your dog safe from the heat and from the issues that come along with it. The dog days of summer are here. And that can lead to a rough time for our furry friends.
So I think the basic thing to remember is common sense. If it's hot for you, it's even more hot for them.
Dogs with long hair may need even more care. Luckily, Teddy here has Emily Collins watching out for him.
He was getting long. His hair was growing really fast, and we were trying to wait as long as we could because of his puppy fur, but we knew it was going to be too hot. With the weather coming up, he would be miserable.
But the heat doesn't only strike from above. The high sun angle this time of year can make asphalt as much as 50 degrees hotter than the air around it. So when we see 80s and 90s, which are commonplace in the Queen City during the summer, that means asphalt can get as hot as 140 degrees. Essentially, if you wouldn't walk barefoot on it, your dog shouldn't either. Chelsea Mensa makes sure her dog, Riley, is always prepared.
Actually, I have doggy Crocs for her when it gets really hot. She has to wear her doggy shoes if we have to go out to potty anytime. So That really protects her paws. That's what I do because, you know, they still got to go when it's hot out and we can't avoid the asphalt.
The shade at Freedom Park provided plenty of respite from the heat for creatures both two- and four-legged alike. But there was no hiding from the burning love Amani Johnson Darby has for Deuce.
Deuce is literally my son. I don't care what nobody says, this is my baby. At home, I leave a ice cold water. I put ice in his water so it can be cold throughout the day. I also make sure to keep the fan on rotation while I'm gone because the heat, you never know.
The heat isn't the only threat our slobbery simpaticos face, though.
So there are always going to be the warm weather parasites, so things like mosquitoes, fleas, ticks, all of those guys are going to be more active right now. And in particular, we worry about things like blue-green algae in ponds and still water sources.
Making sure you're up to date on vaccines and medications are key to getting through the good, the bad, and the fluffy, like a walk in the park. Well, Dr. Hendren was also telling me that canine influenza was a really big issue last year. She's hoping that her efforts to really pump up vaccines and medications will help really tamp down any sort of influenza outbreak this year. But also local shelters have been dealing with outbreaks of kennel cough all through the winter and spring. So if you're seeing your dog with a consistent cough or a fever, do your part, quarantine your dog, and call your vet. Morgan?
Great advice. James Scott reporting live in Uptown tonight. James, thank you.
And weather-wise, it's hard to believe, but our first major winter storm in about 3 years is now knocking on the doorstep of the Carolinas. As I mentioned earlier on the radar, it may be showing a little bit of rain and snow. Looks like it's largely dissipated, but the thing is, it's still very dry down the surface. A lot of this is evaporating. Now, this won't evaporate. Down to our south and west, a tandem of low pressure systems right in that region, the deep south. Looks like mainly rain in the deep south, but keep in mind, they're still seeing temperatures in the 40s and 50s. Here, we'll largely be below freezing for the majority, I should say, of the event. So if you're going to see precipitation, it's largely going to be frozen. So once again, here's what's going on, that tandem of low pressure systems. And this is really a classic wintry setup here in the Carolinas. I know a lot of us like to say if it's not snowing in Atlanta, it's not going to snow here. That's actually not going to be the case this time. Actually, it should snow in North Georgia. But what's going on here is we have high pressure up to the north. A lot of focus is on these low pressure systems because, yes, they're bringing the moisture, but we can't forget what's bringing in the cold air. We call this process cold air damming. This area of high pressure bringing in that cold air from the north and east and damming it up against the mountains. This is once again a very classic way that we see snow here in the Carolinas. So here's kind of what to keep in mind as we move within the next 12 hours. That's when that snow, sleet, freezing rain starts to move on in. I think most spots north of the North Carolina-South Carolina border, they start with snow. That transition, especially south of I-40, I'm going to show you that in just a second, that largely occurs by sunrise, and ice really ruins everything. Not only does it really hurt our forecast because there's so many liquid to snow to ice ratios that we have to keep in mind here. If this was all snow, a lot of us could see close to a foot of it, but the thing is, we know we live in the Carolinas. We have that warm air that I'm also going to talk about a little bit later in the midsection of the storm that's really going to contribute to this eventual transition to sleet and especially freezing rain. So future track heading into the early morning hours, I think by about 2 a.m., many of us will start to see snow, even these areas down to the south and east. And keep in mind, all of us below freezing or at least near freezing to start on out. Now as we get into the afternoon, still staying cold here in the Piedmont, but if you're at 32.1 degrees, it's going to be rain because of that, of course, warm air aloft. If you're not at freezing, you're going to see rain. I'm going to say that again, but a lot of us will see that sleet transition and then eventually to freezing rain. As I mentioned, as we get above freezing here, yeah, 32.1 degrees, that's going to transition back to the wet stuff. But you do see a lot of sleet starting to mix on in. By the way, this is the high resolution model that we have here, not our in-house model. I think it handles these kind of snow events pretty well, moving up and out of here by about 10 p.m. or so, and then maybe a few flurries left over in the high country. So famous last words. What could go wrong? Too much warm air aloft. That's really going to eat into our totals if that happens. If we have too much warm air, a lot of us are going to see sleet. We do not want to see sleet. We do not want to see freezing rain. We're going to see wintry precip. If you're rooting for that kind of stuff, you want to see snow, not the icy stuff. If that dry slot arrives in early, dry air really on the back end of the system, if it moves in early, that could also hurt our forecast. And of course, not enough surface cold. So I think we're going to be okay on that last point. But here's your 7-day forecast for now. Going to go over those totals once again in just a second. Here's your 7-day forecast in the mid to lower 40s Monday and Tuesday. Thursday and Friday, maybe tracking yet another wintry system moving on in. So once again, I'm going to have those totals in just a second. Bottom line, talking about power outages, that wind moving in as well, Drew.
All right, good to know. We will keep our eyes on it and checking back.
Well, unfortunately, Marvin, a warmer climate also means warmer oceans, which means an extension of the hurricane season. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. The National Hurricane Center watching out for 2 areas of storms that could become tropical really within the next 48 hours or so. Within the next 5 days, we do have a 90% chance of a storm down to our south and east. And if both of these do get named, by the way, it would be the most active November we've seen since 2005. That sounds familiar. That was the year we had Katrina, Rita, and Wilma. Fortunately, this season has been a little bit less active, but still above average. And this is a storm we're going to need to watch just north of the Caribbean. Looking at our future track, it's going to gain strength over the next few days. And regardless of whether or not it gets named, and by the way, the next 2 names on the list, Nicole and Owen, it is bringing rain to the southeast. And the recent trends are bringing it farther westward, which means it's more likely that we're going to see impacts in the Charlotte Metro and beyond. You see, by Thursday, likely going to be a tropical storm at the very least at this point, Thursday afternoon, moving on into the southeast, and that moisture is going to get flown northward after landfall there, and that could lead to rain Thursday into Friday. That's Veterans Day Friday, maybe even into the weekend before that circulation eventually roars offshore off to the north and east by looks like the end of the weekend. So here's the point right now. It's going to bring rain to the southeast regardless. Just covered that there. And the Carolinas will see something. Now, whether or not that means it's lots of rain and wind or just clouds, that remains to be seen because impacts are 5 days out. Forecast changes can and likely will happen. We'll keep you posted online, over the air, and through our WCCB WeatherWise app. Right now, though, starting to dry on out over the Carolinas. Record highs on the way, by the way. So look at this cold front starting to move on through, but the cold air not moving on in until Tuesday. So for tomorrow, waking up 60s pretty much across the board, feeling muggy again by the afternoon. Yeah, winds returning out of the north and east, but we could be touch and go with 80, 78. That's the record high for tomorrow. I think we do at least get there, and we might even crack 80. We have a wild week ahead, though, folks. Yes, that colder air starts to move on in, feeling more like fall Tuesday and Wednesday, but then we could be talking about Tropical Storm Nicole or maybe Tropical Storm Owen. Doesn't matter what the name is, even if it doesn't even get a name. It's bringing rain around this area Thursday, Friday into the first half of the weekend.
Yeah, James, I was hoping we were out of the woods for tropical trouble this year, but I guess still got a little bit to go.
Yep, that we do. Lots of rain on the way. I'll talk about those totals as well. A lot can still change, but you're going to need that umbrella Thursday, Friday, maybe even Saturday.
All right, we'll keep watching. All right, thank you, James.
Yeah, would be a cool experience, although right now, at least not seeing anything on our WCCB weather stem camera right here on the roof in East Charlotte. We'll keep an eye to the sky, most likely only seeing some very faint reds if we see anything at all, but hey, worth taking a look. Right now, temperatures near 70 all around the metro, and for that matter, the foothills and Piedmont on this mostly clear evening. Now, we are tracking a few showers near the Triad there, but that's outside of our viewing area. Not really any problems to speak of at the moment. Zooming on out, we could be talking about a few more of those problems, especially heading overnight tonight, but really late morning, early afternoon tomorrow, particularly to our south. I'll explain what's going on. It's actually the same system that brought all that devastation down to the deep south. We were talking about that earlier, especially near Rolling Fork, Mississippi. Unfortunately, those same areas under a level 3 out of 5 risk. That's in the orange here. Now in the yellow and the green, those are level 1 and level 2 respectively. So lower risk risk, and pretty much all of it's going to remain south of Charlotte in that lighter green. That is non-severe. And I'll talk about these systems coming up in just a bit, but I want to show you the big picture here. This system, same system once again, that's been bringing all of those problems to our south and west. Well, it's going to take its time moving across here, and it's going to start to build some more energy as it moves into the next really 24 hours or so. Still sweeping up moisture and that energy I just mentioned out of the south and west. That's the Gulf of Mexico there. Now, it all really depends on where this front is going to set on up. Recently, it's been trending more southward, and that's really good news for us because we stay on the cooler, non-severe side, and hopefully that's still going to be the case. And that's what our in-house model is showing for our Sunday morning. Here comes that initial line, really sweeping through to the south, showing a bow echo. Basically, what that means is that there's a lot of air coming down from the jet stream near the surface, bowing out that rain, really pushing it out ahead. And that's where you could see some severe winds. Now, if this were to move just a couple dozen miles up to the north, that would be closer to our neck of the woods. So that's why we want you to stay weather-wise over the next 24 hours. You can track these storms, by the way, on our WCCB weather app. It's absolutely free, has live radar for you, but it looks like for the most part, it is going to stay southward. Good news there. Now, I will say a round will hit us at some point. Right now, looking like overnight Sunday into our Monday. But I'm glad to tell you here, this is pretty much going to be non-severe. Still might be loud, some gusty winds upwards of 20 miles per hour, but by and large, going to be non-severe. So our best chance to see rain is really overnight Sunday into our Monday, and especially the farther south you are, the more likely you are to see stronger storms and just rain in general. Look at that, closer to an inch down to our south and east. Most of us along I-85 staying near a tenth of an inch. North of that, pretty much nothing. Here's your 7-day forecast. This is a cold front moving on through, so we will see colder air coming on in, of course, Tuesday into our Wednesday. But look at this, Trish and Marvin, nowhere near freezing for the next 7 days. Looks like the coolest we're getting overnight Wednesday into our Thursday, lower 50s there. And by next weekend, well, we're sitting pretty back in the 70s.
You know, when Jimmy talks about that bow echo, you got to tune in to that.
Should I go on the reel? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That's good stuff, James.
Love to hear you talk about that bow echo.
Yeah. Hopefully nothing going to happen. It really does look like it's going to stay down to our south. But, you know, that's why we got to keep you weather-wise. Just, you know, a little difference of a couple dozen miles. Yeah, could be our problem.
Friends in the Midlands will watch out.
Yes.
Indeed.
All right. Thanks, James.